Oh, that sun's a-looking good this morning. Hey, everybody, it's your boy, String Bean. Up here at one of the off-grid cabins, obviously, getting ready to can some potatoes. And I'm going to tell you why potatoes. And I'm going to show you the old school method. Stick around, stay with me. It's going to be an awesome day. Let's get the party started. You know the drill. Before you light the fire, tuck the beard. Braid and tuck. Oh, buddy, look at that sun coming up this morning. Second day of fall in the Appalachia Mountains. It was about 62 or 63 degrees. I absolutely love it. Nevertheless, let's get to work. The off-grid can, what you'll need is a few kettles or pots. Now, if you don't have kettles or pots, you can go back and look at the stone bowl video, and this will work hand in hand with the stone bowl video. Off-grid canning. Think about it. You got plastic jugs or plastic bottles or plastic containers. You want to preserve food, you can boil in plastic using the stone bowl method. But nevertheless, we've got some pots and kettles. You'll need a few utensils. You'll need water, obviously. Canning jars, salt. The intended target, the potato, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Some cardboard and an old t-shirt, a towel, whatever you can use for a buffer, for a cushion. Stick around and stay with me. I'm going to get these potatoes ready. We got work to do. Fire's doing good. And we're cutting our potatoes up into 1/4-inch squares. You don't want them cut so thin that they turn to mush. Looking for any imperfections, such as bruising, rotted places. Cut those out, because that will cause that can of food to spoil. Now, a word to the wise. We're in bear country. Discard everything once you're finished. Clean up your mess. You don't want bears to associate this cabin or any cabin that you have with food. They'll return. They'll always return. They can wreak havoc on your cabin, your supplies, and could be deadly. Nevertheless, let's continue on. Stay with me. We're just getting started. Sanitizing your jars is a must, for the simple fact is, if there's any bacteria in that jar, any whatsoever, it will cause your food to spoil. Now, a lot of people believe in boiling your seals. I do not. I believe in heating them up and cleaning them with the water and vinegar solution. Okay? If you boil your seals, that will weaken that rubber. And over time, they'll give way and you'll lose your food. Now, having said that, if you're using the stone boil method, if you'll revert to the stone boil, okay, you can use the same process, stone boiling, your jars to sanitize. Being very careful, because there's stones in the bottom of that bucket. Placing the jar in the water nice and slow, allowing the heat temperature to change. But all you're doing is sanitizing. Stay with me, children. We're just getting started. But why the potato? I can take this potato and cook it 5 different ways and get 5 different flavors. It's an easy food to keep, easy food to store, high in carbs, high in energy. You know, most of my life, I thought the potato originated from Europe. Professionals, professors, genealogists, archaeologists, scientists thought that the indigenous tribes, the natives, first came up with the potato, had the potato, but we were both wrong. We were all wrong. Studies have found that this potato originated from Peru. Yeah. The Peruvians had the potato. The Spaniards on merchant ships and trade ships brought this to Europe and to the Americas. So if it hadn't been for the Spaniards and the Peruvians, we wouldn't have this wonderful, wonderful potato, which I love. Now, I know it goes without saying, but sometimes you got to be reminded, or I should say it anyway. It's obvious. Before you handle any foods, raw foods, of any kind, either wear gloves or clean your hands, sanitize your hands, super clean your hands, because if not, you're putting bacteria back into your food, back into your sanitized jars. It's a given. Clean your hands. Yeah. Now that our jars are sanitized, our lids and seals are cleaned, I've got clean water in this kettle to go into the jar with my potatoes. So I want to make sure it is free of bacteria and clean. Bring it to a boil. This kettle, that's on standby. The process time is 3 hours. You're going to boil away a lot of water in 3 hours. You've got to keep that bath at a boiling point. So you have 2 kettles or containers boiling. When you add water, you don't want it to change the temperature of that bath. That's the purpose of having 2. 1 to replenish water, 1 to bath the jars. I've got a buddy up here with me. Dog. If you're using the cardboard method, obviously cardboard becomes pliable, very soft when submerged in water. You're using this as a cushion. If you're using the cloth method, my grandma would use discarded clothes, clean discarded clothes. Some folks would use pillowcases or sheets. My grandma never would. They was raised hard. She found it a lot easier to use hand-me-down, wore-out clothes to intertwine as a cushion. Nothing more disheartening than get into this process and have one of your jars to bust. It's happened to me, it's happened to my ancestors, happened to a lot of people. That's what you want to avoid, of course. So whether you use cardboard or just a simple old t-shirt as a buffer, as a cushion for those jars, because it's a long process time and those jars become weak and can weaken. You don't want them bumping together. Water's about on the boil. We're about ready to get started. Still a long ways to go. Stay with me, children. We're canning taters off grid. Notice the piece of cardboard in this kettle. Unlike pressure canning, which is pressurized, obviously, this is free floating. There's a greater chance of loss from a failed jar or damage. So you want as much cushion as you can possibly get, because they've got to cook for 3 hours. That's the process time. You'll have to look at your elevation, but this is the way my ancestors done it for years and years and years. Our water is just about ready in this kettle. We'll go ahead and get the potatoes packed. Move on to the next process. Hands clean. Go ahead and put your potatoes in there up to the shoulder. Kind of pack them. Give yourself a little bit more space. Continue to look for bad places, bruises, spots. That's about all I'm going to get in this one. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Drop the potato. Be sure to get it up. Bears like potatoes too. Now, if you want to add seasonings, now's the time to do it. Might give them a little buddy over the potato. The potato looked like it had a bad spot in it. Yep, we're good. Well, we're good. I see one that had a bad spot. Discard that one. Pack them in. Looking for bad spots you may have missed. A spot or two. I seen one in there somewhere. Now, whoop, get your potato up, buddy. Bears like them. These will keep for years and years. I'll tell you a funny story about that in just a moment. Now, once you get that taken care of, you want to add, they say, a teaspoon per pint. I don't hardly go that deep into it. Right there. Tablespoon per quart. Let's get the water in these. Stay with me just a minute. Add your water just up to the shoulder of the jar. Just finger tight. You don't want to torque on them. Just finger tight. That's all you're wanting. Our other kettle's on the boil. It's hot. Let's get them in the bath. Stay with me just a moment. A bit more water. That's why you have water on the boil. About an inch above. Oh, they're good. They're good. Let me show you. They've already started the boiling process. I'll add a buffer of cardboard and we'll let them sit. That's why we have that pot over there on the boil. As water dissipates, we'll be able to add water without changing temperature. Now we wait. As the water evaporates, we'll take this water over here and add to it. The process has begun. Cross your fingers. Now the cardboard that's in the bottom of the kettle stops the rolling effect. It will still boil, but that will cut back. You can see the jar's moving just a little bit. That'll cut back on that rolling effect. That's the purpose of having the cardboard in the bottom of the kettle. You can do this in a wash tub. Like I said, back to stone boiling, there's a plethora of ways to preserve food. Just a process. Now I'm going to let you in a little secret that you may or may not know. Something I didn't show you. But you have to remove all those trapped air bubbles out of that jar. That ensures there's no bacteria growth. And that ensures that it's unlikely that it'll explode, both causing food loss. And the whole purpose of this is food preservation. I've seen people take wooden spoons and spatulas and go around the jar and remove the air bubbles. That's fine, but I don't use anything. I simply overpour my jars, removing all the air bubbles, and pour out to the desired depth inside the jar. That gives me confidence and assurance that all the air bubbles are removed. I've seen people use spoons and butter knives. Don't use anything metal inside that jar. You could damage that jar, weaken that jar, and cause food loss. We're boiling. We've got time. Stay with me just a minute, children. Before history was recorded, humans preserved food by way of drying and smoking, fermenting their food for storage, for hunts, trips. Now this was before recorded history. That's how food preservation began. That's how it began. Stay with me just a moment. Now we wait, maintaining constant heat and constant water levels above the jars, looking for any food loss. And when the process is done, you look for any discoloration, any damage. Regardless of the size of container that you're using or the amount of food that you're processing, you use the same method. Canning itself is a story all its own, regardless of how you choose to can. Napoleon Bonaparte put out a reward in 1795 for someone to come up with a way to preserve food. 15 years later, Nicholas Appert came up with a way to preserve food in wire reinforced glass jars with wax paper, which leads me to a funny story. Early 80s, I remember going to Grandma's and was wanting something to eat, and she had a little concrete cellar across from the bathroom. It was cold and damp, dark, had one little click light in it. And she went in that little cellar and came back out with a jar of jelly that had wax poured down in it and had wax paper on top of it. That's a method, or was a method. It's not considered safe now, but she removed that wax paper and dug that wax out. And inside that jelly looked like it was mold. And I said, Grandma, there's something in that jelly. She said, that's a little mold. It won't hurt you. It's okay. So she dipped me some out and put it on toast and I eat it. Wouldn't advise it today, but I did it then. Nevertheless, stay with me, children. We're on the move. We've got some time. Now, after Nicholas Appert came up with a way to preserve food in jars with wax paper, the first commercial
canning process came in about 1912, when Peter Duran, an Englishman, introduced the method of sealing food in tin cans. That was the first industrial breakthrough in canning. Even though people still smoked, fermented, dried their food, that was the first industrial process in canning. And having said that, I remember as a young boy, commercial canned food didn't have an expiration date because of the process of pasteurization and heat and sealing. But now the FDA requires you to have expiration dates. But this canning method is the same as it was, just the equipment has changed. Jars with the clamps and the rubber rings, using the same process, storing in a dark, cool place, lasts for years and years. Then in 1858, John Mason invented the glass jar with the threads that are molded into the jar itself, and used the wire clamps or lids with rubber seals. Oh, we're well on our way now. About an hour into it, maintaining constant heat and water levels. This is a time-honored tradition for my people in Appalachia. This method right here. You see, regardless of what method you use, there's a process. Whether you bath can, pressure can, smoke, freeze, ferment, dry. Regardless of what method you use, follow the process. But I think it was in 1810, Peter Duran, an Englishman, came up with a way to preserve food in tin cans, metal cans, using heat. And it wasn't until 1912 that the United States adopted a way to commercial can, using pasteurization and heat, sealed cans. I can remember as a boy growing up, Mom would buy canned food from the store. We didn't have an expiration date on the can. You do now, because as time progressed, we learned that food does spoil in those cans. The process remains the same. The equipment changes. Knowledge grows. Understanding. The Ball brothers came up with the ring and seal, adding molded rings into their jars for this process here. Kerr came up with the real pretty blue jars with a wire attached to the lid and a rubber ring seal. You can still find those at flea markets and novelty shops. People still use them for dry goods, but they don't use them to can anymore. Well, like I said, you know, the process remains. The knowledge and equipment changes. They now have a single piece lid. Quattro Stragoni came up with a single lid processing jar. That eliminates the ring and seal. It all comes together in one piece. Knowledge expands, but the tradition stays the same. The purpose is food preservation. These 4 little pints will add, I think, up to 15 pints of potatoes I have for the off-grid season. And that should do me. That should be enough. Add a little water to that. Stick around, stay with me. We're not done yet, children. Oh, we're still cooking now. This is a good life right here. But I was thinking about, as a young boy growing up, playing out in the yard, doing chores or whatever I was doing, and smell supper on the stove, and be running through the house. And, what's for supper, Mom? She'd tell me what we was having, and 99% of the time she was probably peeling a potato, or had a bowl of potatoes on the table. Nevertheless, she'd reach me a big old piece of potato, raw potato, and she'd say, "Here, eat this, your supper's done." Thus began the saying, "Take an old cold tater and wait." True story. You see, without a cushion of some kind, whether it be an old towel, an old shirt, an old pair of pants, or cardboard, my jars would be jumping everywhere. That's the purpose of the cushion, to maintain that jar from bouncing. We've got some extra water over on the bowl to maintain our water level. We're still in it, children, about an hour to go. Well, it's been right at about 3 hours. Look how beautiful. Look how beautiful those potatoes are. Get that out of the way. Nice and cool. Let them cool real slow. Real slow. Look how pretty. Them jars are very vulnerable right now. No discoloration. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's just set here just a minute. They may seal as they cool down. We'll find out. I gotta get that water off. Yeah. Of the fire. There we go. Turned out beautiful, beautiful. Nothing odd looking. Color looks great. No cracks, no leaks. Now to let them seal. Stay with me, children. That's what they should look like. That's exactly what they should look like. Beautiful. Beautiful. Three hours in a hard bowl. Total of 15 pints for the trap shed. It's been a good day. Glad to show you the process. This is your boy String Bean. Mountain Bushcrafters Lines. As always, go farther, stay longer. I'll catch you. I'll turn it red somewhere. Thanks for watching. sealed. Let's clean up our mess. Thanks for watching.